The fire in the hearth does not warm this chamber. It only mocks me. Every pop and hiss of the burning oak sounds precisely like her. Helena Schubaron. It is the dead of night in Innsbruck, the hour when the thin veil between the holy and the profane wears its thinnest. I sit here, clutching my rosary, but my knuckles are white, not from prayer, but from the phantom sensation of strangling that arrogant, mocking laughter from her throat. "A fool in robes," she had cried out loud. "A peddler of fears, not faith." The words do not fade. They fester. They hang in the rigid air from this stone cell, thick as the winter frost. She dared to stand in the house of God, her velvet skirts brushing against the pious, her eyes alight with a defiance that belongs only to the condemned. She is a woman of wealth and standing, thinks her gold creates a fortress? She does not know the Inquisition, does not care for coins. We care for souls, and hers is a rotting black thing that demands to be exorcised. I stare into the dying coals. The face of the fire shifts. It's not just Helena anymore. When I close my eyes, I see the face of every woman who has dared to look at me with judgment. The matrons in the pews, the wives who whisper behind their veils, the daughters who lower their eyes just a second too late. I see them all. They're not individuals. They are vessels. They are descendants of Eve, the soft-fleshed conduits through which the serpent enters the world. My obsession with that whore, this wretched biting heat that consumes my chest, is not weakness, it is revelation. How could I have been so blind? I sought to root out a singular weed, but I failed to see the garden. The soil itself is poisoned. If this one woman can defy the vicar of Christ, if one woman can stand before the altar and scream heresy, then that entire sex is malignancy. My hands tremble as I reach for the quill. The ink is cold like dried blood. I feel a strange, terrifying clarity. My rage is not a sin. It is a divine instrument. The desire to see her burn is not lust. It is righteous hunger of the flame to consume the chaff. If I must break her to prove truth, then I shall. If I must tear the very fabric of their societal protections to expose the harlot beneath the fine silks, then I will be the one to do it. I'll write it down. Every thought, every suspicion, every manifestation of their inherent treacherous nature, and I will codify the cage. That wretched bitch thinks she's shamed me? She has only provided the catalyst. I will not just destroy her reputation. I will render every woman in Christendom a suspect until the world is scorched clean of their influence. The fire's nearly out now. Good. Let the darkness come. I have work to do. I'm Dump Cakes.
And I'm Sparkle Tits, and welcome to the Time Travelers Club. So, yes, we have some wonderful new names to go with us this week.
Yeah. It's an inside joke. You don't get it. Those are canonically our names now.
Yep, that's this is us. We exist. Congratulations. You have now found the new iteration of us.
You've got the great historian Dump Cakes and God, I call myself a great historian. I hate myself already. Like I'm not. Dump Cakes and Sparkle Tip.
We
need to keep it late. As you could maybe tell from our cold open. It's gonna be a heavy one, guys.
This one's gonna get dark.
We're gonna start. This whole thing's been dark. Between the witches and like the extra nipples and like everything. So and the burning of it all. So we're just trying to keep it light. Before we get into stuff that's gonna get us real ragey. Um, Because, guys, this is going to be a bummer. We're all going to be real mad at the end of it. Okay.
Yes.
I want to tell you that people learn from mistakes. They don't.
No.
They don't.
They don't. We are still repeating the same God's forsaken things in the modern era.
And the language continues, right? Like the language continues, unfortunately. And this is like where we're gonna get. This is the guy, the one of the, but a main guy, right? Who created the language that we're still dealing with today. And like to be fair, it seems to me like no facts, just vibes. Like he is giving Frollo energy, and if he like for real, like the Disney villain, everyone's like, yeah, he's an asshole. Like that. This is who we're talking about today. Like who I believe genuinely influenced this guy because for real, it reads that like I'm like seriously just swap out some names, swap out some backgrounds, but like the meat of it's the same story. So
Correct.
Which is unfortunate. You just want that character to be like fictional, and you're like, oh, or like a conglomeration of a bunch of bad people. It's like, oh no, this might just be literally this guy, and they changed his name. Oh,
yeah.
So today we're gonna talk about a little man named Heinrich Kramer. And you are like, who the fuck? Who is that?
Well, we'll get into it.
We're going to get into it.
We are definitely going to get into it, but buckle up. Take the biggest chill pill of life. Because
get some gummies, get a drink, whatever you got to do.
Yep, because we all going to be pissed off at this one.
Mm-hmm.
Around the year 1430, in the walled Alsatian town of Schlettstadt, a prosperous, self-important little city of guild halls and grain markets on the road between Strasbourg and Colmar, a boy was born who would, by the time he died, help teach an entire continent how to murder its women. History does not remember his childhood. No portrait survives. No letters from a mother, no anecdote of a boy chasing geese through the market square. He enters the record as so many historical figures unfortunately do. Already formed. A young Dominican, already ambitious, already certain of his own righteousness in a way that would define and eventually consume everything he touched. He took the name Heinrich Kramer, though he would spend most of his adult life signing himself in Latin as Henricus Institutorus, a scholarly translation of his own surname, which meant plainly shopkeeper or peddler. It is a strange irony worth sitting with. A man who would come to see himself as a soldier of God, a hunter of demons, a hammer swung down upon the neck of Satan's army on earth, carried a name that meant nothing more dramatic than a man who sells things in a stall. Perhaps that discomfort followed him. Perhaps it didn't. But the tension between the smallness of his origins and the apocalyptic scale of his self-image would come to define his life's great project. He joined the Dominican order, the order of preachers, the intellectual shock troops of medieval church, the order that had produced Thomas Aquinas and had staffed the machinery of the Inquisition since its founding in the 13th century, while still a boy, entering the priory in his hometown. He rose quickly. Before he was out of his 20s, he had been made prior of the Dominican house in Schlettstadt itself, a position of real authority over grown men twice his age. Somewhere in these early years, he also earned the rank of Inquisitor, a title granted him for an enormous stretch of the Holy Roman Empire. The Tyrol, Salzburg, Bohemia, and Moravia, territory that would have taken weeks to cross on horseback. His voice from the pulpit was said to be extraordinary. Contemporaries describe him as tireless, magnetic, and impossible to ignore, possibly a little mustachy. He became...
Honestly, if you want my 2 cents, gives Charlie Kirk energy. Like, young, look, I'm going to be blunt, okay? Like, I don't want to give people compliments, right? When I don't believe in, like, what they're selling, right? But, like, you have to give certain credit because otherwise he wouldn't have been as influential as he was. He was conventionally mediocrely attractive man, right? Who had some kind of charisma, where young people, especially young women who were maybe for whatever reason predisposed to want to fall for that nonsense, right? It gives that energy. Like someone who spoke and was very influential and spoke passionately from a dark place, shall we say. So.
I think that is a good parallel. I don't disagree with it at all.
And they kind of speak to the same things, as we're going to find out.
They
like
really
it's like,
do.
it's
They
like,
really
well,
do.
I mean, are we surprised that he was not very original? I guess
No.
not.
But he became, for a time, the right hand of the Archbishop of Salzburg, a man trusted with delicate and dangerous ecclesiastical business, the kind of cleric other clerics watched to see which way the wind of Roman favor was blowing. By any measure, this was a life of considerable success, and it is precisely this fact, Kramer's real standing, his real authority, his real intelligence, is what makes what come next so unsettling. The man who could write the most notorious witch-hunting manual in European history was not a marginal crank shouting from the gutter. He was an insider, a trusted operator, a man the church itself had armed with real power. And that is what made the damage that he did possible.
To understand what Kramer would eventually build, it helps to understand that he did not invent the idea of the witch out of nothing. Of course he didn't. He inherited it, and it refined it into something far more dangerous than it had been before. Roughly a century before Kramer had been born, the crime of Maleficarum, harmful magic, curdling milk, souring crops, causing illness through spell and charm, blah, 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 was an old and familiar category in European law. But it was not yet fused to the idea of an organized, devil-worshipping conspiracy. That fusion, as we kind of discussed last week, happened gradually, and it fits and starts largely in the Western Alps, the mountainous borderland of Switzerland, Savoy, Dauphine, sometime around 1400, where local panics began to describe not lone practitioners of folk magic, but entire secret sects, bound by Satan by oath, meeting in the dark to renounce their baptism and conspire against Christendom. It was a new and much more terrifying idea, and it had spread.
You know
One
what?
of the men.
I wanna bring another perspective in here, because the idea of anything that is outside of Christendom is satanic. That's not a new idea.
No.
But this is very satanic panic. And realistically, I think it was more along the lines of, yeah, there might have been people going and practicing the old religion, doing the older ways.
You have these like waves, like the satanic panic. The term is coined, of course, from like the 80s, right? But you have these waves of like panic, right? You have it in the early
Mm-hmm.
20th century, especially once like that second new wave of like spiritualism had really kind of ran its course.
Mm-hmm.
You have that. You have it in the Victorian era. You have it pop up again during the Enlightenment, like with the occult. You see this like with Madame de Montespan, who is like the lover of Louis XIV. She's known for eating babies during a black mass where their blood was poured all over her so that she could have a kid.
Oh
That didn't
Lord.
maybe it didn't happen. It's real weird. Real question mark, I guess, on that, which I'm a little surprised. I'm like, oh, okay.
No, but it seems very fanatical, fantastical,
Mm-hmm.
and
But that
realistically, these people, yeah, they were probably practicing the older religions, the ways that, maybe their grandparents, great grandparents, ancestors of any kind practiced, but it had nothing to do with the Christian religion, and the Christian religion took offense,
it right.
obviously.
It's just more of this like these panics in general, right? They coincide honestly outside of religion. It's like when you have these like gradual and maybe just a little bit of a lurch of like social change, right?
Hmm.
Um, whether that's like the 80s, right? And you saw a lot of like new wave feminism and things happening and like LGBTQ plus like recognition, which is of course when the violence was at its worst too, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like how dare you say the quiet part out loud, right? Like all that. Oh, it must be Satan. He's changing the world. It's the apocalypse. Same thing with like the Roaring Twenties when it came up that because again like oh like there's this like moral depravity going on and everything else, right? And
We
then
can
you've
see their
got
ankles. Oh my god.
like right, but like there's that, and then like the Victorian era, like again, you see it again, and then with like Madame de Montespan, like like it's like they have too much. There's all these rich folks that have too much free time, but there's also like the court of Versailles. Everyone's stupid rich. There's like this new world that everyone's exploring, and like all this like enlightenment crap's coming into like full focus, like full swing now, right? And it's like big changes, right? And the church is still there. It's still the first estate. And they're like, maybe some are cool with all that and others and like real not. So and like women are taking more liberty than ever, but like, and it's like, oh, like whole boobs hanging out. And like now some people are like, this is great. And other people are like, I hate this, and like that's when you see these like patterns.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
like of course the 30 Years War and all that, like you have this rise of processism and like everything's changing. So of course you see this huge in like crazy uptick.
Yes.
Um
When there's new
it's like it's
thoughts,
a
the old guard comes out in force, in
mm-hmm,
mass.
correct. And like to be fair, and they're going to use it as like, oh no, like they're doing this isn't like progressive, like where people are coming up with new ideas and it's just change and that naturally happens. No, this is what's the old boogeyman, right? Let's the go
Hmm.
to, and like it works, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, it's like like we're not getting into the trenches per se, like that, but like it's like unfortunate. Like you do see it, and like you kind of see it, unfortunately, kind of happening again, sort of right now.
Hmm.
Like we start seeing progress. People, but in like people being accepted and loved for who they were, and like this like and like people not liking it. So I mean now you're kind of seeing those people being kind of persecuted and like it's like it comes in waves, yes, and it's not always the same intensity. It's not always the same. Like sometimes there's long spans in between, right? Um, and I'm not saying like what was going on like in Versailles, where like people are dumping blood all over their coochies. Well, also there was the poisonings that were happening. That was a big thing. It,
Hmm.
it coincided with that, and there was like this lady who's described as a witch, who's like giving everyone poison and like abortives and things like that. And it's like, yeah, she was probably giving people medicine and crap, and like also like terrible husbands where women had no way out. She's like, hey, look, I'm not. You didn't hear this from me, but if you give them double the dose, like. like,
Very Aqua Tofano.
like and like they're like, oh sweet, like you didn't hear that from me though, so be careful, don't double the dose, wink wink, you don't want to get sick, wink wink. not, I mean, don't go murdering people. That's not great. But like, also, like, a lot of these women, they had no way out. So, oh, but that being said, we're going to get into it. This is actually weird. This is not me going on. It is, but it's not me going entirely on a ADHD side quest here. This actually, some of this information, you're going to see it be relevant. So, you're going to see it be proven true. So, getting back into it. So one of the and most responsible for carrying that idea into respectable theological circles was the Dominican named Johannes Nieder, born a generation before Kramer, who attended the Great Council of Basel or Basel. Basel? I don't know. It's Basel. I don't know. It gets weird. Whatever. Point is, he's in this big important council in the 1430s. A sprawling, years-long gathering of the church's most powerful clergy, like, right? Because, like, that's the other thing with these councils. Like, if you're looking on paper, you're like, oh, there's like a gathering. It was like, what, a summit? Like, it took them like a week or two? No.
These were years long.
Years. Like, that's the other thing. Like, in school, like, you're learning, like, this is why it's important to, like, talk about this, like, in a detailed way. Because, like, otherwise you're like, wow, like, they made a lot of choices and just, like, like, no, it took them years to debate on this, right? So, I think that doesn't do it justice unless you, like, make a note of that. So ostensibly, they convened to address reform and heresy, which became almost incidentally a clearinghouse where stories and theories about new diabolical witch sects, that sex, like sex, like with a CT, I mean, they're probably doing that too, but this is all being circulated and hardened into something resembling doctrine, because you got all these old, well, not all of them are old, but very conservative, patriarchal men getting together and bouncing ideas off each other. So,
that's
what
always
could go
dangerous.
wrong? What could go wrong?
Everything.
So, Nider's major work, the Formicarius, also known as the Anthill, is a sprawling dialogue on reform and vice, including a fifth book, because yes, there's multiples, devoted specifically to witchcraft, drawing on secondhand accounts of inquisitors working the Bernese Alps later, decades earlier. Men who claim to have interrogated a self-confessed male witch, because that's the other thing too. The gendered part of it kind of comes a little more later. I feel like you did have a lot. It's like, for example, Merlin, right? Like, and like, I feel like they get away with more, but like Merlin's definitely like the product of like a succub, an incubus and like a what lady, and then they're in infernal union, and he was supposed to be the Antichrist, but JK, because he got baptized. So I guess he's got all the powers, but none of the bad stuff. I don't know, but like, I don't know, but like,
So it sounds realistically, as an aside, sounds kind of like demigod origin stories, though, doesn't it?
It's, yeah, and it's like an explanation for a lot of that. But anyway, so but they're talking about specifically male witch, right? Describe, and I hate when people go like, "You mean a warlock?" No,
warlock means liar.
I don't.
No.
And also there's other crap, and like that's also like very regional, like like, no, I mean, I'm male witch, okay. Also, it's like warlock somehow gets this, like, witch is like, oh, they're always bad, whereas a warlock may not always be bad. He's gonna be like, just a tricky guy, and like, see, we're giving excuses to men. No, male witch, describing infant murder, as you do, and demonic pacts in vivid procedural detail. Okay, so they're like, one of their claims the proof is some guy they found in the mountains alone, probably, who's going about like, yeah, I love to eat the babies, and like telling them in detail how he does it. Yum, 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 yum. And that's their proof. That's some of their proof. So yeah, Nider's witches were not yet overwhelmingly gendered female in the way that they would soon become. But his work already carried the germ of nearly everything Kramer would later inflate into monstrous proportions. The reality of the diabolical pact, the credibility of confession under duress, which is none, but
Correct.
they're saying it is, but whatever. The notion that this was a hidden, spreading conspiracy. Tell me when to stop when this sounds familiar.
Paranoia.
Mm-hmm. They're like, no, damn libs. They're trying to undermine everything. It's not possible that reflecting pool was ruined not by those aren't tire tracks that look like tire tracks. No, that's a guy who cut it for 350 feet.
But it's not tire tracks.
But it's not tire tracks, and the only way you could do that is with a vehicle. And the only person in the vehicle, nope. Don't think too hard. But that this isn't about the reflecting pool. So rather than being just scattered folk superstition, Kramer knew Nider's work intimately, right? And he leaned on it heavily. Later editions of the Malleus were even printed, bound together with the relevant book of the Formicarius. So it's like the prequel. All right. It's like the Hobbit with the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, no!
Yeah. Like totally different tones. Like one's way darker. Oh, no, not Bilbo.
No, not Bilbo.
Oh. They really wouldn't like that book. They really would have hated the whole series, the whole thing. Guaranteed. Mm-hmm. As though the publishers understood that the two texts as a matched set, one supplying the theological foundation, the other the operational plan. Oh, so one's the similarian. That's what. Oh, but. So Kramer, right, was in this sense not a lone visionary, but a man who took a half a century of scattered regional anxiety about diabolical witch cults and did something no one before him had managed. He had organized it into a simple, reproducible, portable system. We love when we codified hate and bigotry. We love that. No. That is the uncomfortable truth about the Malleus Maleficarum. Its horror lies less in originality than its packaging. This was also, crucially, a world being remade by new technology, because that's the other part of it. That's the other part of the witch hunts. Like whenever you have these like panics, because the world's like developing too fast, and people freak out. Like the 20s. Like the Industrial Revolution, like the 80s, like, so, I mean, and as like, just like an aside, this like kind of development, right, is kind of exponential, right? Like we go from, like if you look through history, right, technological advance, like like the further back you go, takes longer, right? But as we develop more, the quicker the like in between innovation is, right? Like, and like we lose some of it sometimes, like we take a step back from certain aspects maybe from time, but like it's like crazy to think about like people from like the 1800s probably, like technologically speaking, had more in common with like Vikings like 1,000 years ago than us. And we went from like, like horse and carriage, to, which in itself, like you went from like horse and wagons and like things like that to like the horse and carriage system, which doesn't seem like real big, but it was right? And it took all that time to get there. And then from horse and carriage, we went to car, to plane, to like in space. Like
Within
so,
like
like
100 years.
and like even in our own like lifetimes, I'm gonna date myself now, but like when I was a kid, like the concept in the 90s, like the concept, hell, even the 2000s, like FaceTime, something we all take for granted now, like Zoom, all that,
That was
right?
not
Like
a
that
thing.
that was sci-fi as hell. Um, the ability,
Everybody
like
having a tiny phone in their pocket and able to just
that's
talk to
also
anybody.
right.
Yeah.
That it's in itself was like, whoa, crazy. Um, Now it's like it's that all your no one's phone is like a phone, like we hardly ever use it for that purpose. We literally have all of the information in the world at our fingertips at any time, like GPS. That was some sci-fi stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not no more. We all need it now, just to like damn, like find a
Like,
grocery
fuck.
store.
The people that remember MapQuest, those are my
Mm,
people.
yeah. And it's like, but like, think about that, right? Because think about the time, like, from the telephone being invented, right? To then, like, the cell phone. And then from cell phone, like, again, it gets smaller. Like, the innovation gaps get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And therefore, it's crazy how rapid society and the world's changing. Sometimes so fast that we're not able always to keep every aspect is supposed to keep up with it. And when we can't keep up with it, things sometimes bad things happen, like
People fight back.
and then that causes moral panics. So because we don't have answers yet, eventually we'll get there. But like, it's like you think about like when cars first came out, right? Like and then when cars became affordable for anyone to have, and like you could go anywhere now, right? It was just like trains. That was like more limited than cars, but like now you could go, like anyone could go to the other end as long as you had a railroad track, right? And you had a ticket, so, and that was unheard of before, right? When you have steamships and like you can literally cross the Atlantic Ocean in like for like 5 days, when it used to be 5 weeks, and people died regularly, and now you're taking leisure trips. Like that's the kind of innovation we're talking about, and that's where, like, when it's happening too fast, for things to keep up with, that's when we see these panics. And I think that's also why we're seeing them kind of happen with a little bit more back-to-back frequency, because it follows the same trajectory. But I'm not a sociologist. I'm just it's like vibes. It's like kind of a pattern. Anyway, so there you go. That's my thoughts on that.
Good thoughts.
So this was also crucial in the world being remade, like I said, by technology. Johannes Gutenberg's press, the printing press, right, was barely a generation old when Kramer began his career. And the cult, see, and again, this is just like cell phones, right? It only takes a generation,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like everywhere. It's in your life. Like, and people are like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it was like a printing press, only out for like a couple decades. Like, right. And think about cell phones. How deeply ingrained is it? Like, we can't function without them anymore. Like, even if you want to, right? It's like you need your phone for like apps to like identify yourself and everything, and like to get a hold of everything. Like, yeah, like this is the same thing, in that sense. And the culture of print was still working out what it could do, just like the internet and phones. Like how fast an idea, once fixed in movable type, could travel from workshop in one city to a courtroom in another, entirely outside the old slow networks of hand-copied manuscripts and clerical gossip. Everyone was just writing letters before. Now it's like you can just print it and everyone will know your business. Like,
Yeah.
right. It also makes reading way easier when everyone, like, you don't have to worry about handwriting anymore. It's just like easy to read print, and like, oh, literacy starts to go up. If you have money and time to teach your kids to read, it makes it real easy. So You've got that going on. And Kramer would come to understand this new machine's power better than almost any of his other contemporaries, because of course he does, right? It's like Kirk with social media. He understood its value, unlike some of those old timers, right? And he would use it more ruthlessly, which is appropriate, than any theologian of witchcraft before him. That too is part of the story of the world that made him, not just an inherent idea, but a new engine for spreading it faster and farther than ideas had ever traveled before. Because, I mean, I want to point that out too, right? We all learn about the printing press like, oh, it was this great invention. It allowed, like, of course, all the things I just described, right? You don't have to rely on handwritten texts. It's cheaper to make. More people can get their hands on material, and it can be way more widespread. All great things, right? On paper, literally. But just like the internet, right? We have all this information at our fingertips, right? All the world's knowledge. And what do people use it for? Right.
Yep. So
Tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time. And you have to think, especially because literacy was just on the rise. This was helping to expand it. These people were taking any words that were typed down, anything that was made with a printing press, they were almost taking it as gospel.
What? Right. And that's something. So if you look at like Americo Vespucci, the Spooch, I just like the Spooch. There's a lot in his own lifetime, all these like fantastical tales like attributed to him, putting to the printing press in a biography saying it's like true, right? And like there's no fact checking yet. There's no like laws about copyright too. That's the other thing. Or using someone's name or anything, because like no one had to really think about that before, right?
No.
And stuff we take for granted now, but like that stuff that like no one did that. Like if you were writing something, typically it was for like royalty, right? And like at like their like leisure, right? Like they might have like you as a writer write something, and then if they liked it, they would want the people in their court to maybe read it. And so it's like also assigned reading. And so then therefore they might have a room full of guys make a bunch of copies to then be sent as gifts to their friends, right? Who then go on and read it. Right. So you have like a patron system, and you don't want to piss your patron off. You're being commissioned, like, right. Whereas now it's like, oh, like I just do what I want, right? It's like AI right now. You can just create whatever you want and tell people it's real, right? And then people go, oh, like what the hell's even real anymore? That's literally going on with this right now.
Exactly.
And anyone can put anything out, no fact checks. So
keep that in mind. Kramer's own hunting of witches did not appear out of nowhere in 1485. It had been building for at least a decade. By the 1470s, he was already conducting inquisitorial investigations into sorcery in the German lands, and in 1484 he found the imprimatur he had been seeking. Pope Innocent VIII issued the Bull Summus Desiderantes Affectibus, desiring with the utmost ardor, a document Kramer had actively lobbied for, complaining, by some accounts, that German clergy were not treating the witchcraft threat with sufficient seriousness. The bull formally acknowledged the reality of witchcraft as a menace to Christendom and explicitly authorized inquisitors, Kramer being chief among them, to root it out. Goddamn.
Coming for you. Kramer's coming.
Apparently.
Oh, don't say. Oh, that's a bad sound clip. Kramer's coming.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, he's coming for you, witch.
Kramer, chief among them, to root it out wherever it might be found. It was political as much as theological. The papacy had its own reasons for extending inquisitorial reach. into contested German dioceses where local bishops sometimes resented outside interference. But to Kramer, it must have felt like vindication from God himself, printed and sealed in Rome. He was not named alone in that bull. Alongside him stood a second Dominican, Jacob Springer, a man whose life and reputation deserve far more attention than the shorthand co-author usually gives him. Because his relationship to Kramer, and to the book that would forever link their names, was nothing like a partnership. Springer was, by every measure, the more distinguished cleric of the two. Born around 1436 in Rheinfelden, he had entered the Dominican order as a teenager, and by 1480, he had risen to dean of theology faculty in the University of Cologne, and one of the most prestigious academic posts in the German Church. He was known across the Rhineland as the Apostle of the Rosary for founding the Confraternity of the Holy Rosary in Strasbourg, an enormously popular lay devotional movement that spread his name and reputation for genuine piety across the region. In 1481, he was made inquisitor for the provinces of Mainz, Trier, and Cologne, a serious, demanding post covering constant travel through some of the most religiously contested territory in the empire. He was, in short, everything Kramer wished to be seen as: respected, orthodox, trusted by his superiors, untouched by scandal. And according to the scholars who have dug most deeply into the surviving record, Springer appears to have wanted almost nothing to do with Kramer's project. Some historians describe the personal relationship between the two men as openly acrimonious. Springer reportedly used what institutional power he had to make Kramer's work more difficult when he could. And there is no solid evidence that Springer ever personally conducted a single witch trial of his own, in sharp contrast to Kramer's obsessive, hands-on interrogations. The likeliest explanation historians now offer is that Kramer, having been named alongside Springer in the 1484 bull, simply attached the more respected man's name to his book title page without meaningful collaboration, hoping Springer's reputation would launder his own.
Which is exactly what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like laws against this yet, and even if they're like, there's not even really a good way to like once something's out there, it's out there.
Exactly.
That sounds
like
familiar.
how is he going to bring it back?
Right, and it's like, I mean, yeah, and like I guess the only response is like someone takes the time to then also publish their own thing and be like, no, I don't agree with that. But a lot of times, even if they do that,
it just looks like
done. Yeah. And so, but like, we also see that today where people piggyback off of someone else's clout.
Yep.
To elevate themselves. And yeah, so I mean, again, tale is all this time. You know what? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's unfortunate.
It is. It was only in later editions, printed after 1519, decades after both men were dead and could no longer object, that publishers began consistently crediting Springer as full co-author, cementing a partnership that may never have functionally existed. Springer died in 1495, having spent his final years as the head of the entire German Dominican province, a position of real trust the order would have been unlikely to grant a man it believed had co-written such a compromised text. Kramer tested his new papal authority first in Ravensburg, near Lake Constance, where in 1484 his prosecutions ended in the execution of two women. A grim, but, by the standards of what was to come, almost restrained beginning. It was enough to convince him that he was right. It was enough to send him further east, into the mountains, toward the city that would break him.
If there is a single hinge point in this story, the moment where personal humiliation curdled into a document that would outlive its author by 4 centuries, it's in Innsbruck. Late in 1485, Kramer arrived in Tyrolean capital at the head of an inquisitorial commission, granted jurisdiction by the local bishop, George Gulser of Brixton. And I do want, just for a minute, to talk about the Inquisition. Like, I'm not going hardcore into it. Like, but the Inquisition has a reputation, maybe a deserved one, okay? But there's plenty of times where the Inquisition actually stops witch trials, weirdly enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are people who live, like, they're kind of like cops in, like, today, like, you know, the stuff going on with police and stuff right now, right? And people are like, oh, not all cops are bad, you know, like, but there were, like, just like there's police officers who do actually genuinely want to uphold the law and, like, do right, okay? Like, there are, right? There are, okay? There were inquisitors that literally were like, we're just here to make sure nothing shady's happening. And a lot of times they would be like, you guys are being crazy, and you've killed a bunch of people, and that's murder. And they were not, in fact, witches.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that happens often. Like, they stopped. There was a whole Spanish witch trial that actually was stopped by inquisitors, right? There was like one renegade inquisitor, kind of like Kramer, who just went kind of crazy with it, and then they show up. They're like, "No, I'm so sorry. He's new. We're letting the rest of you go. I'm so sorry." Yeah. You know, so our bad. And it could have been a lot worse, right? But they actually stopped it from happening. This is not going to be one of those stories, though. Okay.
Unfortunately.
So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, the Inquisitors are not good people. Okay, like as an organization, right? Because just like kind of like the police and stuff going on.
Oh, honey, it's not like the police. It's like ICE.
Well, even the police, right? Because there's so much that police, like ICE, is a product of this like unrestrained policing, right? Like where there's a different set of rules for police, like where if they kill someone, they may just get laid off, right? Suspended without pay. Maybe they, you know, have to move, you know, where the rest of us go to jail, like, but for a long time. But like it's like there's not the same, like, it's like exceptions are made because of who they are, right? And like we're also like killing a normal person versus being a cop killer, where we actually have a term, right? It's like, how dare they? How could they? And I'm like, well, that's literally their job. I'm not saying it's cool to kill anyone, but that's part of the job. You're putting yourself in harm's way. You are between, in theory, supposed to be between the populace, right? Like innocent bystanders and stuff, and someone who's doing something bad, right? Like that's like what you signed up for. And like, not cool. No one should die, but like, I mean, it is statistically more likely to happen when that's literally your job. But like that's like, oh, like they get like full like condemned whether they did it or not, right? If they even looked at the guy funny. And that's kind of what the Inquisition is, right? Like they are held to a different standard, and there's less like controlling them, right? There are some rules, right? Internally, they can internally investigate themselves, right? But the accountability is so different, right? And that's the problem, right? And this will be one of our case in points. So Kramer is sent to investigate witchcraft in the region. He came, by his own account, on a mission to save souls and cleanse the city of a hidden enemy. Because of course they are, right? They're there. You just can't see them. Not that like, hey, I'm going to investigate and see if there's any nonsense going on. It's like, nope, I've already determined they're definitely going to be here. I just have to find who they are. Right? No evidence, right? Just
crazy.
Right. That's the part that, you know, and like we see some of that going on today too. It's, you know,
all
like,
vibes,
well,
no facts.
if they ran away, they must be guilty of something. Why would they run away? I'm like, well, maybe because big burly men who look like they hate you are coming after you. I don't know. And like, there's all these stories of where they kill on people. I don't know. Anyway, almost immediately, because of course, something went wrong, and it went wrong in a very particular way. Among the citizens, he set his sights. The person he set his sights on was a woman named Helena Schubaron, the wife of a prosperous local burgher named Sebastian. Okay, so like burger, like, you know, like when you watch the Christmas movie with Santa Claus, like the origin of Santa Claus, it's real weird. There's an acid trip. It's great. And you know, their pupils dilating all over the place. But the main bad guy is the Meiser Burger.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the title. It's like essentially like a mayor lordy kind of position, right? Like like city leader kind of person, right? Like important people, like rich important people.
Yeah.
So this is his wife, right? And this was a woman contemporaries described as sharp-tongued, independent, and entirely unafraid of clerical authority. My kind of gal. I love her. I already like her.
Too. I like this one.
Yeah, she's sassy and doesn't take no shit. Girl, good. The two had, it seems, already crossed paths before any formal proceedings began. Passing Kramer in the street shortly after his arrival, Schubaron reportedly spat and cursed at him in front of witnesses. So when we say cursed, it's not like she spat and she's like, an oh, boo, blah, boo, hadava, cadavra. No. She was like, fuck you, dude. What are you doing here? That's what we mean. Okay? She's like, right? And, you know, I don't think it came out of nowhere. He probably was an ass. And she was like, get out of here, you know, you worm. And she went telling the, quote, wicked monk that misfortune should take him. You know, pretty much like, fuck off. I hope you know, pound salt in your ass. That's pretty much what she said to him. You know, again, I like her. When pressed to explain herself, she is recorded as saying it was because he preached nothing but heresy from the pulpit. Good. She called him out as the crap. All she did. And she avoided his sermons afterwards and was encouraged her neighbors to do the same. I like her. She's like, this guy's a bigot. He's going to just be nothing but trouble, guys. Like, don't give this guy the attention. Don't listen to him. Don't give him the time of day because Lord knows. And she's right? Of course she is. Of course she is. And because this is, I want to point out too, this is not someone who's on like the fringe of society and like that. She has a whole ass husband who's rich. People listen to her. She's like, yeah, she's a confident lady, but like that doesn't automatically make anyone like hate you, right? I mean, it does, like anything, like maybe cause issues. Like she's a little bit of a Karen, whatever. But like, I think we have like that, like we talked about last time, this image that all these witches were these like poor people on the fringes of society, and it's not. It's not. This is someone like I don't think on paper, other than the fact that she had like a maybe more confrontational personality, would immediately be like, oh, she's an easy target. Not at all. I think if anything, she's the worst of the targets to try and hit. You know, because people listen, and she has the money to do it. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, so when Kramer moved against her, along 13 other citizens, because of course that's the Karen of it, right? Like, there were people who didn't like her, right? Or maybe saw an opportunity to hurt that family through this, right? And this guy was their way. They're in. They would formally accuse her of witchcraft, and the trial that followed revealed something about Kramer that his ecclesiastical superiors found impossible to overlook. An interrogation that fixated obsessively, almost hungrily, on the woman's sexual history and conduct. So he's going full Frollo.
That's gross.
You know, it's giving Frollo and Esmeralda, like for real. Like
it is.
He's like, you know, what is the line where he says something and then she says something back. I'm blanking now. Um, uh, God, because she goes justice. Like that's pretty much it. Like he's saying like this hateful crap, and she's like just giving it right back to him. Like, no,
Mhm.
you're wrong, and you're a bigot, and you're preaching, you're poisoning the gospel, like to like push your own vendetta. And she's not wrong. She's not wrong. Like, who hurt you, Kramer? Who hurt you? Like, why do you have these issues? Is it mommy issues? I wish we knew. I wish we knew.
I really do wish we knew.
Because not every guy who ends up in the church, like we saw with Springer, is an asshole. You know, like, I mean, like they're probably their own kind of asshole, but it's like the kind we're all used to, where it's just like, okay, old white men, like whatever. But like they're not like killing people over it and like, you know, singing whole ballads, you know, as they lust after people. So, you know.
I mean, that's
So,
something. But
you know, so anyway, Kramer was not operating alone in that courtroom, and this matters. The tribunal included secular representatives. Among the figures watching from a position of real political weight was the Archduke Sigismund of Austria, the regional ruler whose territory encompassed the Tyrol and whose own instincts, as later events would show, leaned towards skepticism about how far these prosecutions should be allowed to go. Thank God, right? Like, thank God, right? Like, someone here has a level head, right? The proceedings grew uneasy. The questions strayed from theology into something that read, even in the 15th century clerical eyes, as prurience rather than prosecution. Bishop Goslar, watching from Brixen, began exchanging increasingly tense letters with his inquisitor, urging him to moderate his approach. Again, this sounds really familiar with certain modern stuff. You know, tell the far right crazy guy, ultra conservative person, that they need to tone it down. They never do. Kramer refused to yield. They never do.
they never do.
They never. Uh, so
Could
Kramer,
never,
of
would
course.
never, will never.
Right. And Kramer surprisingly refused to yield. He stayed right on it in Innsbruck after the tribunal itself lost patience and suspended the proceedings. They're like, we're done here. Enough. Like dismiss it. Get out of here. Think about this, right? This is like, so they've dismissed it essentially, like, well, okay, but like, we're done here. And yet he continues to gather evidence and interrogate suspects on his own initiative. Like the
After he's
official,
told to calm the fuck down.
by like the Archduke, by the like tribunal, by his own boss, like everyone who
like,
has say is like, nah.
Chill.
And he's like, but you gave me a badge and a gun, so here we go. On like a bunch of lackeys. So anyway, so defying the spirit, if not yet the letter of his instructions, because I guess technically no one told him stop, like, but they're like, maybe you need to chill, and he's like, never. So, like, anyway.
No, you know what?
Course,
Hold on. You know who it reminds me of? Luther.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
like,
of course, and he has the co-author who didn't get along with and everything too. It's like real weird. It's like this keeps happening, and why
this
Germany?
keeps happening in the same fucking time period. What the fuck?
Like, why Germany? Stop!
Please stop!
Ew, Germany! Ew. So of course this could not last, right? And in 1486, Goslar finally lost his patience entirely. And he broke entirely, right? So in a final letter, the bishop ordered Kramer out of his diocese, dismissing him. He fired him. Okay.
Love it.
in words that must have landed like a physical blow on a man like Kramer's pride, as senile and out of his mind. Tell me where. Tell me where. Facts, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me the lie. The woman Kramer had arrested, the women, sorry, plural, women Kramer had arrested were released. True Baron among them, acquitted and returned to her husband and her household. The city, in effect, had looked at the church's own inquisitor and found him not righteous, but ridiculous, not holy, but obsessive. A middle-aged friar consumed by a fixation on a defiant woman's body that he could not adequately justify even to his own colleagues. Picture him leaving Innsbruck, not triumphant, not vindicated, but expelled publicly, humiliatingly, by name, from a diocese he had entered as God's chosen instrument, right? Whatever Heinrich Kramer felt in that moment, we know what he did with it. What do you think, Courtney? Do you think he realized the error of his ways? Like, maybe I took it too far. Maybe I need to self-reflect.
No, double or nothing, baby.
You're telling me you don't think he went on like a little vacation, took some time to introspect, write down his ideas, and be like, why did I go that far? Why was I so obsessed with her? Maybe there's something I should look at. Maybe it's because my mom didn't love me. No, of course not. He did not reconsider. He went to Cologne and he began immediately and furiously to write, as you do.
As you do.
God.
The thing is, like, he sounds like the shut-ins of 4chan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I told you this guy.
He quite literally reminds me of a goddamn incel.
Mm-hmm. He is. Like,
I know.
He just is. That's it. He is. And unfortunately, and just like the Mustache Man had this problem too.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's just like just enough people listen. It's just enough, and also the incel man, the Mustache Man, also had he got fired, and then he got like a little writing period. So, don't let them write books, guys.
Don't let them write books, guys.
Don't
Any
do
book
it.
by an incel, absolutely the fuck not.
Don't do it.
What emerged from that writing fury over the course of roughly a year was the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, first printed in Speyer in 1486 and properly published in 1487. The book, as we have seen, is not in truth a wholly original work. It draws heavily on Nider's Formicarius and on a broader century of demonological writing, canon law, and scholastic argument, stitching them together in material that had circulated in fragments for decades into a single, terrifyingly usable synthesis. At points, Kramer reproduces Nider's stories almost verbatim, referring to him with real reverence as one of the most eminent authorities on that subject. That, in fact, is exactly what made the Malleus dangerous. It was not innovation that gave it power, it was organization. And Kramer's genius, if it can be called that, was structural rather than theological. The text unfolds in 3 parts, each with a distinct and deliberate purpose. The first is an argument, built with real scholastic rigor and studded with more than 100 citations of Thomas Aquinas, that witchcraft is not superstition but objective reality, and that to doubt this is itself a form of heresy. Kramer,
it gives, if you don't believe in the things I'm passing, this is un-American of you. Right?
I love how you draw it to modern day. It's just like,
I mean, and we have to be careful, right? I'm as a historian, like, right? I mean, it's easy to make like too many connections, right? There are major differences, of course there are. There's hundreds of years between these, but like there is some commonality because we're humans, right? And we haven't changed all that, like physically, brain and everything, and socially, how we function all that much, right? But like this is like it's like a tale as old as time. Like, oh, you disagree with it? That makes you anti this, which makes you the enemy, right? So
Which puts you
it's like
outside of our protected circle. Why are you putting yourself outside of our protective circle?
Correct. Like, and I could go another direction with it. Like, if you look at the Mustache Man, right? Like, oh, you are maybe don't think we should do mass exterminations. Well, that must mean you're an enemy. Like, or you look at the Soviet Union, where, like, again, you run into the same stuff. Like, where it's like, oh, like because you questioned, which was the whole point of the Soviet Union, but whatever. Like, you questioned, you used your voice as a person, right? Because this is supposed to be a government of the proletariat, mm-hmm. And as the proletariat, you dare question like the authority of our supreme leader or whoever. Oh, cool. You get to die because you are a bourgeois anti-revolutionary, which you're like literally they're poor in a proletariat. Like, what are you talking about? They've never been bourgeois in their life, but doesn't matter, right? So
extremists are going to be extremists are going to be extremists. That's just
the long and it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you point out the flaws, very gaping plot holes in their logic. That doesn't matter. Because that's not the point. You missed the point.
No, it goes into cult mentality. If you're not with us, you're against us, and if you're against us, you're dead.
And if you're questioning it at all, you're also against us. Not even you don't even have to be like, I disagree with you or terrible. No, you don't even be like, hey, I have a question. So you said that this law was going to help feed us, but like my family's still starving. Like when does this take effect? Yeah. Or like, I mean, I know that maybe like there's some bad people crossing our borders and stuff, but I don't know, maybe throwing kids in cages, I think that might be bad. You're anti-American. What are you doing?
Exactly.
You're Antifa. Like, you can't have a different opinion. You can't question it. Can't. So, and that's what's dangerous when that stuff gets codified. When they start infiltrating higher, like real positions of power where they can actually enforce things.
Correct.
Right, and in this period of time, there is no separation of church and state. Right,
the church is the state. The state is the church.
And at the barest level, you might have ecclesiastical courts and secular courts at best. Right. We're like, so there's a literal separation, I suppose, but the fact that there's even a church court where the law is just as applicable. Mm-hmm. And also as like a person, like you can kind of choose which court you want to go to. You're like, these guys are more chill about this thing. I'm going to go to, and that's the ruling you go with, whichever court, Mm-hmm. But so yeah, I mean, he's in a position where he can really do some damage if enough people agree with him. So
correct. Kramer knew that he was writing against skeptics, and he built his case like a lawyer anticipating every objection. Aware that the older canon episcopi tradition within the church law had long treated night flights and demonic pacts as delusion rather than fact, a tradition he now needed to argue around rather than simply ignore. The second part catalogs what witches supposedly do. The harm they inflict on crops, on livestock, on infants, and in a fixation that returns again and again throughout the texts, impossible to separate from what had happened in Innsbruck, on male sexual potency. Because if you can't get it up, it is a woman's fault.
Or the opposite. Like, mm-hmm. You made me want to fuck you. Mm-hmm. You are putting a spell on me. You're trying to get me away from God and act on my lust. or like a husband cheats on his wife, right, or is found like this, she's bewitching me, she's making, I can't stop, all I do is think about her day and night, and she just puts these thoughts in my head. So that's the thing that a lot of the time people think, it's like, oh, like they're mad about limp dick, and that's half of it, but it's also an excuse of why they're doing horrible things to kids and men or whatever the thing, like other outside of the like socially acceptable, like, you know, you can fuck your wife and missionary and that's about it.
Yeah. And no, and that is very much tale as old as time. Blaming male sexual urges or lack thereof on women.
Right.
That has been what it always is.
Mm-hmm.
But page after page dwells on the notion that witches could steal a man's virality, could render him impotent through hidden malice, could unman him invisibly in ways no physician could detect or cure. Kramer's imagery here is vivid to the point of being lurid. Passages describing bewitched men who believed their bodies had been physically altered by sorcery and elaborate, almost obsessive discussions of how to distinguish natural impotence from the demonic kind.
I just have this image now of like a bunch of guys who look down, they think they look like Ken dolls, and there's a lady with like a barrel of dicks. Like where they're just like, not like in a gross, like, oh no, like they're torn off. Like, no, it's just like clay or something. And it's just like a bunch of like quivering dicks in a barrel. Like this is not a PG podcast. Like, what are you doing here if you're offended by it? But like,
you see, I may need to actually make a little clay figurine of a barrel with a bunch of tiny dicks in it now, and just keep it on my desk. Lady. I need this so incredibly bad. I need my barrel of dicks.
Oh no.
But what makes this worse is it was not hard to read. It was not beneath the theology. The psychology of a man still working through his own public emasculation at a woman's hands. He also singles out midwives with particular venom, casting them as among the most dangerous women alive, uniquely positioned by their intimate knowledge of the body and of childbirth to work harm undetected. A claim that would echo through the next 2 centuries of persecution against women whose medical knowledge made them targets precisely because it made them powerful. This is very incel behavior. Just all of this comes towards, okay, one, there is definitely a claim that women have power over sexuality because men desire women. Ta-da. That is one of those things. But also, if she has knowledge of any kind that I don't have, or that I don't have access to, that also makes her dangerous. And because I can't have it, she's a witch.
Or I don't understand it. I don't think it's real.
Exactly.
Like, women can't have orgasms. What are you talking about? Like...
Oh,
my life is never...
You're gonna make me rage just with that one.
My wife has never been wet. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God, watching that interview, I was just sitting there going, oh my God, that poor...
I wouldn't say that out loud, buddy. Like, that was
that means you have never turned on a woman in your life.
And like,
tracks.
So there you go.
Fucking tracks. The third and final part is the most consequential of all. A practical manual for trial procedure, laying out how to interrogate suspects, how and when torture might be applied to extract confession, and how magistrates should weigh evidence that, by any earlier standard of medieval jurisprudence, would have been laughably insufficient. Dreams, rumor, the testimony of children, the word of one accused implicating another, even testimony from a suspect's own personal enemies, which Kramer explicitly argued should be admissible. This section was written directly for lay magistrates, men with no theological training who might never read the first 2 parts closely, but who needed in Kramer's mind, a working checklist for sending someone to the stake.
And this is why in Protestant communities in particular, right, this will become important.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we discussed with the Reformation Counter-Reformation episode, one of the biggest changes that we're running into is that you should be able to have a personal relationship with God. You shouldn't have to go through at least like a special school for it, right? So therefore, if your local pastor who's self-taught, self-educated, like, right, there you go. Like, this is going to be great for the common person, who, and even people like witch hunters themselves that come, a lot of them aren't even theologians. They're just dudes. They're just guys, and it's a job, like just regular Joe. Like it gives, like in that sense, like almost like ice energy, but not even, because at least ice is like sanctioned by the state, which is unfortunate. But like it's giving,
Yes, but no.
like well, like sanctioned by the government. Let me put it that way, But yeah, I'm like, oh, but it's giving that energy, like where it's vigilante at that point, right? But no rules against it. So
Very vigilante.
Mhm.
And running beneath all three sections of this book, inseparable from the theology and the procedure alike, is Kramer's foundational claim, stated with a bluntness that still startles nearly 5.5 centuries later. That women, by their very nature, weaker in reason, driven by insatiable carnal desire, more credulous and more vain than men, were simply more susceptible to the devil's influence than men were. My ass. He went so far as to argue, in a piece of etymological wordplay he seemed rather proud of, that the very grammar of the word for witchcraft should properly be feminine, since the crime belonged overwhelmingly to women rather than men. Disgusting. Incel behavior.
So that's where, remember earlier when I said, yeah, this is the guy who made it that way.
Here's the thing. And I'm going to phrase it, and then I'm going to explain it. Men who can't get pussy will demonize it. And I'm not talking about gay men, because I promise you, just about every gay or bisexual man, oh, baby.
Well, it's not, they don't want it. The problem is they don't want to get it. It's the people who want, or for whatever, in this case, Kramer, it's right, it's because he's not allowed to, because this is before Protestants can just like marry people or whatever. But, he's at like where he has to be celibate and all that. And probably, honestly, if he was put into this institution at such a young age, never had a choice, right? This wasn't like an adult who decided they wanted that for themselves. Right? So, and he was taught that everything about it was evil and sinful, and we don't know how many times he got caught touching himself or whatever as a kid, or if that was the case or what, right? But like clearly something's deeply repressed here.
Super deeply
and because he can't act on any of it, it must be everyone else that's the problem. And this is where, unfortunately, we're going to go with it, and this is not new, and it's still something that we see today, like you are describing, or like sometimes it's cultural constraints too, right? Like there's nothing stopping from a certain politician from being openly gay, but because in his head he wasn't allowed to be, from whether it's because of that generation, because he was in a rural part of, what is it, Tennessee, Kentucky, one of them, he wasn't allowed to act on that forever, felt like he couldn't, right? Told himself he couldn't, even though by now he's no one would have cared. Like you could have come out and like we would have accepted you. It's fine. But instead has to act on those things secretly, privately, right? I must, because I can't act on it. I have to demonize the people who are comfortable and open enough who can.
Exactly. Which is stupid. Which is so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It was not simply that women could be witches. It was that womanhood itself, as Kramer understood it, tilted naturally towards the diabolical, and that only a life of enforced chastity could hold the tilt at bay. Very repressed. Super repressed.
But also, tell me where this sounds familiar, does it not?
It does.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Mm.
When you demonize an aspect of life, and I'm not
But also
talking...
systematize it.
Yeah, systematize and demonize an aspect of life, you are going to create these monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is a monster. Let's be super real. We can pathologize and, try and get into his brain and joke about it as much as we want to. We told you this episode was going to piss you off. It's pissing me off so bad. But just because we understand where it's coming from doesn't mean that we have to be like, okay, that's okay, we forgive you. No, fuck these people.
Mm-mm.
Fuck these people.
Mm-hmm.
To bolster a text built on such shaky and self-serving foundations, Kramer bound into the volume, front and center, the full text of the 1484 papal bull that had once authorized his work, and, more audaciously, sought an approval from the theology faculty at Cologne, the very institution whose scholars would soon disown him. What he actually secured was thin and heavily qualified, a document signed by only 4 faculty members, allowing that the first 2 parts of the text contained nothing contrary to sound philosophy, while a second, more general endorsement signed by more theologians but never actually naming the Malleus at all, simply praised the Inquisition's zeal in the abstract. Kramer packaged both as ringing institutional approval. The effect, regardless of the thinness of what lay behind it, was to dress a work of grievance and obsession in the unimpeachable robes of papal and academic sanction. Readers picking up the book in Speyer or Nuremberg or Lyon had every reason to believe they were holding an officially endorsed instrument of the Church. Many of them, including magistrates with real power over life and death, took it exactly that way.
The most theologically literate men of Kramer's own era saw through it almost immediately and said so from more than one direction. So, I mean, that's good news. Like,
it
people
is
in
good
his own.
news.
It's good news.
It's good
Everyone,
news, everyone.
it's good news. Not everyone's trash.
Not all of them. A lot of them are, but not all of them.
A lot of them. But not every man is garbage. So, much like our own era. When Kramer saw a fuller endorsement of the Malleus from the Faculty of Theology at Cologne, it's giving Big Beautiful Bill.
Oh my God.
It's giving that. And I love that. When he went to the Faculty of Theology at Cologne, and the response was damning. As we saw, he had four signers on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't mean that everyone else was just like meh, In 1490, the Inquisition itself, the Inquisition, big bad, right? They're like the Templars in every Assassin's Creed game, right? They themselves condemned Kramer for advocating methods that were, this is rich, unethical and illegal. And for advancing claims about demonology that ran contrary to established church doctrine. Cologne's theologians objected specifically to his endorsement of torture beyond canonical limits and to unsupported claims. So they're like, okay, we have some light torture's fine, but you're taking it too far, bud. Like
I mean,
we have
we have
specific
limits.
church torture specifically. I
Too
don't know
much
what that
church torture.
is.
What the fuck is
I don't
this?
I don't know what that means, but they're like, even for us, this is bad, guy. It's I don't. It's like, and so witch induced impotence is one of those claims. They're like, that's unsupported. No one's giving anyone limp dick, and I think you might just have a boner because you have a boner, my guy. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And this had no real grounding in scripture, or patristic authority. Like they're like, there's nothing in the Bible about ladies giving people limp dick, my guy. Um, you know,
Correct.
like, uh, um, it was in essence a formal repudiation by the very institution whose blessing Kramer had tried hardest to fake. He was answered from a second direction as well. And this second rebuttal is one of the most fascinating footnotes in the whole affair. Within 3 years of the Malleus' publication, a jurist named Ulrich Molitor, writing at the direct request of none other than that Archduke Sigismund of Austria, the same ruler who had watched the Innsbruck proceedings with visible unease, produced a treatise called De Amis et here we go. Pythonicis Malleus, or on witches and female soothsayers, structured as a dialogue between Molitor, the Archduke, and the Chief Magistrate of Constance. The book staged almost theatrically, in which this is a common thing. Like you see it like with like Plato and like things like that, right? And like Socrates, like where they do like these like hypothetical conversations that probably never happened, but it's just like a thought game, right? And also makes it easier for you to like as the audience to understand a maybe more complicated idea by making it into a conversation rather than just being like, this is what I believe, and then just and no one cares, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like if you make it into but like what if like you could throw your hypotheticals and like it just makes it more engaging. And that's kind of like they're following in that streak. So you're kind of seeing the renaissance in that come out through this. But anyway, so like it's like very theatrical, and it's a debate between a witch-obsessed fanatic, clearly modeled on Kramer, and a skeptical nobleman, clearly modeled on Sigismund himself, with Molitor arbitrating as a moderate middle path. Molitor did not deny witchcraft outright, because he's not crazy. Like, like there's some witches, but he was no modern rationalist, of course, but he leaned on the older canon episcopi tradition to argue that much of what witches were accused of, including those night flights to demonic gatherings, were more likely delusions or dreams rather than physical realities. He's like Occam's razor, my guy. Like it's probably just a dream or someone with mental illness. Like, like they're probably not literally flying on anything.
No, and the simplest answer is probably the right one.
They're like, but look at how, and Kramer's like, but look at how well polished their broom handle is. Right.
All that ointment.
Different thing, my guy. Different thing to be, if you want to be mad about it. But he explicitly warned against trusting confessions extracted under torture. And that's something else, we give a lot of like, oh, it was a different time. They didn't know better.
Yes, they did.
They did.
Yes, the fuck they did.
They did. They did. Okay. Just like slavery, just like witch trials, just like torture. Right? No, it's never been good, right? People have known that. People just choose to look the other way. And like when we say that, we're like being apologists for them. Like they didn't know right from wrong. And they did, right? They just chose to ignore it. And yeah, society made that choice easier. But you can always choose not to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like right now, like things are happening where certain things are becoming more acceptable again, which is not cool, right? But yet you can choose not to have an island full of kids, right? Like,
I mean,
you
you
can
could
choose
choose.
that. You can choose that. You can choose to, not like exploit labor. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can choose not to dump things into the environment that will kill people. You can choose not to put things in products that'll hurt people because we know lead is bad,
That is
you
bad,
know?
Kai.
Like, right, like we know these things. So, and there's, I hope to God that like 100 years from now, someone's like, oh, they just didn't know better. We did. So, this is the same thing, right? Like this torture one in particular, it's like, oh, like, well, that's just how they did things back then. And then eventually in like the 1800s, they're like, oh, like torture, confession under torture, everyone knows now that that doesn't get you any real results. We've discovered that. No, they knew. Well, they knew, right? Everyone knows that if you hurt someone bad enough, they'll say anything to make it stop, right?
That's a human thing.
Right. It just tied up with the God part around this time. Like, well, like if they were innocent, God would protect them from the pain.
Oh my god.
Right. Um, it's giving like the same energy, like when they would like drown people, and it's like, well, if they float, then like clearly it's the devil and we gotta kill them. But if they drown, it's like, well, the devil wasn't helping them, so that's sad. Yeah, and then there you all are murderers. Like, but you guys are chill about that. What are you doing?
Nah,
So,
and the thing is, like, the whole thing just comes off as a ploy to just kill people,
right. And he's like,
specifically
so,
women.
and this guy, another one. We've seen a couple of them now. Another one is like my guy. Like, like you have these voices of reason who are like, that's not cool, right?
That's not how this
Um,
works.
right. It's like, it's not only not how this works, but also like, what are you doing? Like, this is bad. You're a bad man. So, um, he also notes that the pain drives the torture to say whatever, whatever will make it stop rather than what is true. So again, in 14, what did I say, 90? Like, we know this. Um, Sigismund's own recorded objections were pointed, and also Rye. If witches truly had the power to summon storms and destroy armies at will, he reportedly mused, princes would do better to hire a few of them to maintain expensive standing armies. Like, facts. Like,
Absolutely.
wh- why am I paying for all these soldiers when I can just have a lady summon a storm if it's that easy? And like, why aren't
Exactly.
more even if you're like, well, you're a man of God, you would never like. So everyone is. Come on,
No, and honestly, that kind of says one of the quiet parts about power out loud
right,
is, oh no, no, no. Power protects power. So power will look for things to protect its power.
right. So it's like nukes, right? It's like this is like imagine someone having a weapon of mass destruction, and you don't have it. Like, sure, you don't want them to have it, but also you want it. So that seems weird. Seems strange. If nothing else, just to learn it, right? Like pulling an Odin and try to like torture it out of them so that you can learn it. Um, Seems odd. Anyway, it should have ended Kramer's credibility, right? It's like you've got all these people coming down, right? Um, but come on, guys.
Oh,
We wouldn't be in the position we are in right now if that was true. Uh,
that
so
is.
How
Unfortunate
many
facts.
times? How many times do we go, oh, there's no way he's going to get elected? I mean, come on. Like, logic dictates. There's no way that they're going to let that happen. Like, I tell my parents now, I'm like, guys, like, you know how many times you've said this? Like, if I made it a drinking game, we'd be trashed.
We would be dead.
Like, they're like, there's no way the Supreme, like, baby. Yes, there is. They'll, like, the rules don't matter. It's on paper. That's all it is. It's a piece of paper. I'm sorry. And they're proving it, honey. Oh, yes. Like, don't say it out loud. Don't say it.
Don't speak.
Don't speak. I know just what you're saying. Like, so please stop explaining.
Sleepy brain is best brain. Yes.
In a more orderly world, it might have, right? Like that's the moral of this story. Of this, if nothing else, this is the moral. Like it shouldn't have gone as far as it did. That's the answer. Instead, something, of course, stranger happened. Kramer's reputation, rather than collapsing, please tell me to stop when you've heard this one before, seemed to shrug both the condemnations off and the rebuttal off, and he got more popular.
Oh, God.
It's like it didn't matter.
No, because he's saying something that speaks to a certain type of person.
Right. And also, like, people don't want to hear just, oh, well, he's crazy, but then have no answers. This guy's giving them an answer for why their lives suck. Right?
Mm-hmm. He's giving them someone to blame. He's giving them an action that they can do versus, oh, well.
And like I've said before, you don't need a majority to overthrow or have a coup or have, right? You just have to have enough people with the pointy bits or the pew pews, right? Like the Nazis weren't a majority. Like, but then they took over the government. Like, don't need to be a majority. You just have enough of them. And I mean, in this case, like you have to remember, 4 people did sign off in just that college, right?
And it made it to where it looked like the entire college signed off for him, even though it was just.
And Eve, and you know who didn't? Well, we'll get to it. So, the book kept circulating, right? Magistrates kept using it because, as we talked about with the Holy Roman Empire of it all, there were plenty of others, right? And Kramer himself kept working, kept preaching, kept being called upon by the very institutions that theoretically should have distanced themselves from him. Because, of course, they did. Because they're like, oh, he's getting popular. Like, he's getting some traction.
He has a published work. Must be a great author.
Not even then, right? They're like, people are buying it. They don't have to buy what he's selling themselves, right? But they can recognize that he draws in a crowd. He gets the popular vote. So they can tame him. Anyway, we'll see. So the city council of Nuremberg, man, Nuremberg's like, I feel like a place I don't know why I want to go. It feels like bad stuff always happens here.
I'm just gonna avoid it like the plague.
I don't know. I've heard it's beautiful, but I'm like, I think it's a beautiful place for dark shit. Nuremberg sought out his expert opinion on witch trial in 1491, which I hate that they called it that. At their request, he even produced a bilingual manuscript of the trial instructions in Latin and German, so that the municipal judges with no Latin education could still follow his procedures to the letter, which is very Reformation of it all, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, technically it's not the Bible, I suppose, but like, I'm like, okay. like you're starting to see that kind of crack open a little bit. In 1495, the Dominican Order's own Master General summoned him to Venice. Oh, he's going on a road trip to Venice. How nice. Where he delivered public lectures and disputations well attended enough to draw the personal patronage of the Patriarch of Venice himself. Around
Concerning.
around 1500, this is the Pope Alexander VI appointed him papal nuncio and inquisitor of Bohemia and Moravia, charged with combating Waldensian and Hussite heresies in Czech lands, a serious and prestigious assignment for a man the Inquisition had formally condemned just a decade earlier. See what I mean?
Hate it.
Hate it. But like, remember, I'm like, there's one, like, now, if they had really wanted to squash this thing, right? The freaking Pope should have said something, but he didn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always going to be people who are going to be like, he's pretty popular though. Let's see where it goes, right? So where they just like throw up their, they don't do anything and they just wait, right? So. And there's something almost darkly comic in this. If the subject matter were not so lethal, a man officially rebuked by the highest theological authorities of his own faith, publicly rebuked in print by a sitting archduke's own commissioned scholar, and yet who spent the last 15 years of his life moving from one position of ecclesiastical trust to another, never once made to answer meaningfully from the book that bore his name, because tell me to stop when it sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
The condemnation of 1490 cost him nothing that mattered. It did not stop the presses. It did not stop the trials. It barely seems to have stopped Kramer from sleeping at night.
What did Heinrich Kramer feel in these final years, preaching against heretics in Olomouc, writing treatises on the Eucharist, growing old in the eastern reaches of the empire, far from Innsbruck and the woman who had spat at him decades before? The historical record offers no diary, no confession, no private letter that lets us climb inside the head with any certainty. And it would be a disservice to him and to history to invent one. But the shape of his final years tells its own story. He did not slow down. He did not soften. Accounts describe a man who spent his last days intensely writing and preaching, still combating what he understood as diabolical influence and ecclesiastical laxity right up to the edge of death. Documenting reported miracles among Italian mystics as further proof of the cosmic battle he believed he had spent his life fighting. There is no recorded moment of doubt, no recorded moment of regret for Helena Schuberin, for the women executed in Ravensburg, for the machinery he had helped build and would never see fully switched on. If Heinrich Kramer ever lay awake troubled by what he had done, he left no trace for us to find. What he left instead was work. Sermon after treatise after tract. A man apparently convinced to his last breath that his war against unseen enemies was not only justified, but essential. And that the men who had doubted him, Gulser, the Cologne faculty, Sigismund's tame scholar, and Constance, had simply lacked the courage to see clearly what he saw. He died in 1505 in Kromeritz, in Moravia, an old man by the standards of his century, roughly 75 years old, having outlived the humiliation at Innsbruck by 2 decades and having spent every one of those 20 years building outward from it rather than away from it. He was, by that point, a man of real institutional standing. Papal nuncio, respected preacher, veteran inquisitor. and utterly unaware, as all of us are unaware of our own historical weight, of what his book was about to become once he was no longer alive to steer or restrain it. Here is the great and terrible irony of Heinrich Kramer's life. The Malleus Maleficarum did comparatively little damage while its author was alive to wield it. His own trials, even at their most aggressive, produced modest results. A handful of executions at Ravensburg, an Innsbruck campaign that ended not in triumph but in his public expulsion. The real catastrophe of the Malleus belongs almost entirely to the century and a half after his death, when the book slipped free of its author's grasps entirely and became something closer to infrastructure. Timing did what Kramer's own charisma and cunning never fully managed. The Malleus rolled off the press barely 3 decades after Gutenberg's invention had begun transforming how information moved through Europe. A treatise that in an earlier century might have circulated in a few dozen hand-copy manuscripts along a narrow circle of clerics, instead went into print. Run after print run, Speyer, Nuremberg, Cologne, Lyon, Venice, carrying a single standardized, procedurally detailed account of witchcraft into the hands of magistrates, priests, and educated laymen across the whole of Latin Christendom. Between its first printing and the late 17th century, it went through roughly 24 editions. It became, for judges who had no formal theological training and no expertise on heresy trials, a ready-made template. Here is how you recognize a witch. Here is how you question her. Here is how far you may go to make her confess. The century that followed Kramer's death was, tragically, primed to receive exactly this kind of manual. Martin Luther nailed his theses to the church door at Wittenberg only 12 years after Kramer's death, and the Reformation that followed shattered the religious unity of Europe. In the resulting decades of anxiety, competition, and mutual suspicion between Protestant and Catholic authorities, each side had every incentive to prove its own zeal in defending Christendom against the devil's agents. And, not infrequently, to accuse the other confession of secretly harboring witches and sorcerers as a form of political theater. Witch panics that might once have been local and stayed that way. In the Malleus and in the growing body of literature, it spawned a shared vocabulary and a shared procedure that let fear travel as efficiently as the presses themselves.
Later demonologists built directly from Kramer's foundation, even when they disagreed with him on particulars. The French jurist Jean Baudin, one of the most respected legal and political minds of the 16th century, published his own influential witch hunting treatise decades later, pushing prosecutorial standards in some ways even further than Kramer had dared, which is scary to think that someone was even worse, arguing that ordinary rules of evidence should simply not apply in cases of suspected witchcraft. Don't need it. Don't prove? Who needs that? Oh
You see,
God.
as extreme as one person may be, there is always somebody who is more extreme. This is something that I was taught from a very young age. No matter how good you are at something, there is always somebody better. No matter how X you are at something, there is always somebody that is better or worse or whatever it is, more loud, more vibrant, more dull.
Yeah.
There is always somebody that will push it further. Keep that in mind.
Yep. And I love that. It's like, proof? Have we been using it? Like, that's crazy. So I am the Senate. God. So anyway, uh, the German Prince Bishop, Peter Binsfeld, writing from the Rhineland in the 1580s and 90s, drew on the same architecture to help drive some of the most lethal witch panics of the era, including the horrifying witch trials which claimed hundreds of lives over the course of a single decade, and later, similarly catastrophic panics that tore through Bamberg and Würzburg in the early 17th century, sweeping up wealthy burghers, children, and even clergy, and their expanding net of accusations. None of these later horrors required a magistrate to have Kramer's book open on the table in front of them. By then, his framework had simply become the water that everyone was swimming in. It became, you didn't need to read it. Everyone knows it.
That's
Everyone knows
horrifying.
it. Right. It is worth pausing on the specific cruelty of what Kramer built into that architecture. Not simply that the belief that witches existed, which was the ancient and widespread long before he was born, but the systematic, almost bureaucratic association of witchcraft with women specifically, and the practical toolkit for extracting confessions that made accusation nearly impossible to survive. Once tortured was sanctioned as a legitimate means of uncovering hidden guilt, and once virtually any social friction, a sharp tongue, a dead neighbor's cow, a midwife's failed delivery, a woman too independent for her town's comfort, could read backward into evidence of a demonic pact, the Malleus offered magistrates a machine that manufactured its own confirmation. Confession under torture became proof of guilt. Denial under torture became proof of a witch's unnatural resilience and therefore guilt. There was the logic of the book. No way to be accused and also be innocent for long. Not everyone accepted this logic quietly, as we've seen, thank God. And the resistance is worth remembering alongside this horror. Molitor's early qualified skepticism found a far more forceful heir more than a century later in the Jesuit priest of Friedrich Spee, who in 1631 published his own passionate work condemning the witch trials as a machine for torturing the innocent, having personally accompanied condemned women to their executions, and become convinced from bitter first-hand experience that the confession under torture proved nothing except a victim's exhaustion and terror. Spee's book went through 16 editions and was translated into French, Dutch, and Polish within a century. A sign that by the early 17th century, doubt was finally beginning to travel with something like speed that the certainty it had always had. Tellingly, some of his own fellow theology professors in Cologne, the same exact institution that had once formally condemned Kramer's methods, were so unsettled by Spee's book that they wanted to add it to the church's own list of forbidden works. That's
book
sad.
bans, yeah.
Not just book bans, but like that's sad. Literally, the ban was like, "Hey, maybe we don't do torture no more." Banned. Like what? But you didn't ban the other guy. You just said, "Oh, it's a shitty book." You gave it a bad review. That's it. Wild. But anyway, the story of the Malleus is, in this sense, also the story of the very slow, very costly process by which Europe eventually talked itself back out of the belief system Kramer had helped weaponize, a process that took not years but centuries, and that arrived far too late for tens of thousands of people, the overwhelming majority of them women, who tried, tortured, and executed under the frameworks of the Malleus, had helped popularize across the roughly 2.5 centuries of European witch craze.
For nearly 300 years, the Malleus Maleficarum functioned as something close to scripture for the profession of witch hunting. Cited, copied, adapted, and trusted by men who never met its author, and who had no idea that the church's own theologians had condemned it within a few years of its writing. Its influence only began to fade with the broader discipline of the witch trials themselves in the late 17th and early 18th centuries as Enlightenment skepticism. Changing legal standards of evidence and simple exhaustion with the human cost of the panics finally closed the courts that had once welcomed Kramer's procedures. By the time colonial magistrates in Massachusetts convened the Salem witch trials in 1692, 2 centuries after Kramer's death, on the other side of an ocean he never knew existed, the specific mechanics of accusation, confession, and proof they relied on still bore the unmistakable fingerprints of the interrogation logic he had first codified in Cologne. What remains today is a strange and uncomfortable inheritance. The Malleus is now read almost exclusively as a historical document rather than a theological one, studied not for its truth but for what it reveals about how learned demonology, canon law, and criminal procedure combined to devastating effect in the early modern prosecution of ordinary people, most of them women, many of them simply inconvenient, outspoken, unmarried, elderly, or unlucky. Scholars pore over its interrogation procedures as primary evidence of how coerced confessions were manufactured. Its obsessive cataloging of female wickedness is studied today as one of the starkest surviving windows into the misogyny embedded in late medieval and early modern institutional thought. Not an outlier so extreme that it can be dismissed, but a text disturbingly continuous with attitudes that shaped law, medicine, and theology for centuries before and after it. The stereotype it helped crystallize, the cackling, sexually deviant, socially marginal women in the secret league with the devil, proved so durable that fragments of it survive today in children's stories and Halloween costumes. A grim afterlife for an idea born out of one furious man's wounded pride. And Helena Schubaron, the woman whose defiance in Innsbruck Street seems to have set the entire chain of events into motion, outlived her accuser's reputation in a way Kramer never could have anticipated. She was acquitted. She went home to her husband. She is remembered now not as a footnote to Kramer's grievance, but as the person whose courage exposed him, whose trial revealed the rot in his methods clearly enough that even his own bishop could no longer look away. It is a small, sharp irony that the woman Heinrich Kramer tried hardest to destroy is the reason we can date with such precision exactly when and why he decided to write the book that would go on to destroy so many others, and that among the very people to see through him were not distant modern skeptics looking back with the comfort of hindsight, but his own contemporaries, a bishop who called him senile, a theology faculty that refused to fully endorse him, an archduke who found the whole business faintly absurd, and a jurist commissioned to write him down in ink even as his book was going to press. Heinrich Kramer died believing, as far as we can tell, that he had spent his life defending Christendom from an invisible war. What he actually left behind was a manual for turning ordinary human fear, grief, and misogyny into legal machinery. A hammer that, once forged, no longer needed its maker's hand, his co-author's name, or even his critic's silence to keep swinging.
If you like what you heard today, please give us a positive review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. It goes a long way for us to appease the algorithm gods and get this suggested to others just like you. The more that we can connect to our fellow history nerds, the more we can build up a community that keeps this show going.
Also, we have a Patreon where you can hang out with us and get exclusive content, like videos where we might try to make some ancient recipes, talk about topics that couldn't fit into the main arcs of the podcast, and just generally being batshit and dumpster fires, all for the price of a latte per month. Research materials and books cost a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time to create this show, so anything that you can provide would be a huge help.
We can't wait to see you again next week, and as always, thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.